around 17% nationwide from 2023. The report included information collected from 69 agencies, including Houston, and compared data from January 1st through September 30th in 2023 and 2024. You're tuned to listener-sponsored, commercial-free Pacifica Radio, 89.5 FM in Galveston, 91.9 FM in Huntsville, and 90.1 FM KPFT, Houston.
Looking out a dirty old window, down below the cars in the city go rushing by. I sit here alone and I wonder why. Friday night and everyone's moving. I can feel the heat but it's soothing heading down. I search for the beat in this dirty town. Downtown Leon was I going. Downtown Leon was I going. We're the kids in America. Whoa. We're the kids in America. Whoa. Everybody live for the music around. Bright lights and music is faster. Good boy, don't change.
And we are back for another episode of Growing Up in America. Welcome here on 90.1 FM, KPFT Pacifica Radio. I am Bree Derry, your Director of Media Activism with Children at Risk, and today I am stoked to again have Susannah Young here with me as our guest co-host.
Thank you for having me, Bree. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be a jazzy conversation. So for first-time listeners, Growing Up in America is a discussion on our children, public policy, and how do we, as a city and a community, do when it comes to taking care of all of our kids. This radio show is a production of Children at Risk, the Voice of Texas Children, a nonprofit organization dedicated to research, public policy, law, and collaborative action on behalf of Texas youth. We are proud to present this program in partnership with ad-free community radio, KPFT. Every week, we join KPFT's broadcast to fill these same 60 minutes with lively discussion on the children of Texas with experts on the quality of life of our children. Of course, we have our favorite segments, Thumbs Up and Thumbs Down, and our data of the day. And this week, our teaser number is 16%. Susannah, any guesses?
Maybe it's the number of parents still hiding Halloween candy from their children?
I was going to say it's the percentage of kids who finish their plates at Thanksgiving.
Oh, well, then my percentage might be a little bit lower.
You think? All right. Well, we'll find out with Dr. Kulesa later on today. But in the meantime, I'm thrilled to have a couple great guests joining us. We have Marta Palaez, President and CEO of Family Violence Prevention Services. We'll be discussing domestic violence impacting children with her. We also have Linda Corchado, our Senior Director of Immigration with our very own Children at Risk, discussing the children of immigrants. Megan Menchaca, back again from the Houston Chronicle, giving us an HISD bond update after the elections. And then we have Cesar Espinoza, the Executive Director of FEEL Houston, once again giving us a post-election citizenship and immigration update. I am so excited. Susannah, are you?
I am absolutely thrilled. We have some great guests today.
Perfect. Well, let's jump right into our thumbs up, thumbs down today. Susannah, today we're talking about high school students working part-time. What do you think? You're a mom.
Ooh, so this is actually a question that's come up several times in my own social circles. And one of the things that I've really noticed is that for high schoolers that work part-time, it teaches them a sense of time management, responsibility. It really helps them to stay on track, right? There's also some really great findings from developmental psychology that suggest that students who work limited hours report higher life satisfaction and confidence, and they feel more independent and capable of managing responsibilities.
We do love independent, strong people, of course, always. Did you have a high school job?
I did. I worked for a plumbing company doing invoices.
Oh, very glamorous, very glamorous.
Oh, yes.
I would say, so I also had a job when I was in high school, and I worked way too much. And I have no idea how I did it, honestly, because I still somehow passed. I got honors and everything else. So I am thumbs up as well, I would say, unfortunately, because we should have a little more contention here, but we don't. But I do think there's something special about giving kids that space to explore extracurriculars and carve out time for clubs and friends and that networking piece that they may miss otherwise in these jobs that aren't quite as glamorous, you know?
Exactly. Hey, thumbs up with a little asterisk next to it, in moderation, right?
Always. Everything in moderation. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick musical break, and then we'll jump to our first guest, Marta, who is ready and waiting for us.
And you don't really read into my melancholy. I've been under scrutiny, yeah, oh yeah. You handle it beautifully, yeah, oh yeah. All this shit is new to me, yeah, oh yeah. I feel the living dark is creeping up on me. So real. I'm damned if I do give a damn what people say. No deal. The 1950s shit they want from me. I just wanna stay.
All right, and we are back from a little tea swizzle. We're talking with Marta Palaez, the president and CEO of Family Violence Prevention Services. Marta, how are you doing today?
Very fine, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course, we're so happy to have you. And may I just confirm, am I saying your name correctly there? I think I might be mispronouncing it a little bit.
No. You are. Marta Palaez, that's fine. You said it beautifully.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I do have Susannah Young here as my co-host. And for my first question, I just wanted to ask you, can you share a little bit about your journey and what led you to focus on supporting kids impacted by domestic violence?
Well, professionally, I began helping children that were found themselves in abusive situations by the parents. And then later on, I was helping parents who had abused their children. When I came to Texas, I offered that dual perspective on abuse to the agency for which I have been working for the past 26 years and have never turned back. So I am convinced that the first opportunity to resolve the problem is with the next generation, the children.
Absolutely. Breaking those generational cycles of trauma are so important. And 26 years, that's a long time. If I may go a little bit off script here, how do you stay well doing this hard work for 26 years? It's been over 2 decades, well, almost a quarter of a century, and that's some pretty heavy stuff that you interact with on the day-to-day. What do you do to take care of yourself?
Yes, I appreciate the question, and it is a question that I get asked very, very, very frequently, and I will always say not everything that we do at Family Violence Prevention Services stays with the people that are receiving the services. A lot of that stays with us. The reward is immense. When you see the little faces of children smiling again, running again, doing childhood appropriate, normalizing that childhood again, I mean, I cannot even explain with words what we feel inside of ourselves. So I have to say that is a big point on why I do the things that I do and how we get through this. But also when a family arrives at the shelter, we immediately turn to that bag of tools that we have by our side and begin to strategize what tools we are going to use on this family to see what fits, what programs are the most that will bring that family recovery and normalization. So I guess those 2 things majorly keep us healthy.
I love that. You just gave me goosebumps.
Absolutely, and the work you do is so incredibly important and powerful. And speaking of the bag of tools that you use to decide what fits for each family, are you noticing any trends or statistics related to children, tools you're using often in the current landscape?
Well, sadly enough, I have to say that 2/3 of the population we serve at any given time, any given year, and let me tell you that can be 5,000 to 7,000, 8,000 in a given year. So it's a lot of people. 2/3 of that number will always be children. That is, the majority of the victims of domestic violence are not women, as shocking as that may sound. They're not men, but they are the children in these homes. So I think that trend confirms itself year after year.
I wish that one day we could find a way to truly see that trend decrease and for it to not confirm itself again. But speaking of the kiddos specifically, a lot of the time when we're in a traumatic environment, especially as children, we don't have the words or the confidence to express what's happening. So what signs can caregivers, educators, teachers, these other adults that may be in their periphery, what can they look for to help these kids?
Oh my goodness, I very much appreciate the question. So they may be in general, they may be acting out the behaviors that they're being modeled at home. They may be using the same language. They may be withdrawn. They may be involved in bullying others. They may be aggressive, maybe having nightmares or insomnia. So they are looking tired in class. They're falling asleep. They may be bedwetting. Antisocial behavior is another one. They will be having problems in school. Their grades will go down. They used to be very social with their peers in school. Now they're withdrawn. They're quiet. Drug use is a common one as a means to cope with what they are living at home. Anxiety, signs of depression. They may express homicidal or even suicidal tendencies. So it's a myriad of things, but rest assured that the signs are there. So I very much, as I said, appreciate the question. So for anyone that may be listening, an educator, pay attention to any of these signs and just ask a few questions and have a brief conversation with the caretakers to see what may be bringing to the surface the impact of domestic violence to their child.
Absolutely. And, I'm a former educator myself, and that is something that is so incredibly important. I think oftentimes we focus on the behavior and really focused on compliance and trying to make sure that kids follow the rules in classrooms without thinking about the underlying issues, which is why those signs are so incredibly important. And on the note of really trying to help children cope and recover from the realities of domestic violence, have there been some really effective programs or initiatives that you've seen or worked with that have really made a tangible difference in the lives of those children?
And I'm going to go to the simplest one, and that is removing the toxic elements in a child's life. You will see that child come back to whatever it was that the child was before the domestic violence began to impact him. Give them back the opportunity to live a normal childhood with stability, nurturing relationships, physical protection, safety, appropriate experiences that include protecting their future to which they have a right. Consistent systems of support. And what that means, I think I'm going to underline and highlight nurturing, attention, nurturing. That is what our children need, to stay away from the stressors that the parents recognize are in their lives. Sometimes I cannot help but ask, who is really raising our children? Is it the media? Is it the games that they are playing on the tablet? Is it their peers who may be having problems of their very own? Who is raising the children? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves, and hopefully the answer is a responsible set of parents. And if not a set of parents, a responsible parent, a responsible caregiver.
I think that's so important. And I just think about the need to have a community to raise a child. Like there's that saying of it takes a village, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's no village, they're going to find the closest thing they can to it. And I hope that it's the responsible caregiver more often than not. I am curious, despite these really, really sad and really heavy realities, what are the most effective programs? Oh, I'm so sorry. What are the biggest challenges? I misread my question there. In addressing the long-term impacts of domestic violence.
Oh, okay. So, aside from the upward trend, right, because the numbers keep increasing, I would say the implementation of holistic approaches. When a family is experiencing let's say a mother, because mothers are the majority rather than fathers, even though men are also abused, I have to say. But when a mother and her children are experiencing domestic violence, the self-esteem of the adult is the first thing that begins to erode. Then it goes the health, the physical health. Then it goes the resources available to do things, just to do things, because financial violence is perpetrated, and it's part of the number of factors that go on in domestic violence abuse. So it's a progressive erosion of everything and every resource, inner and out there resource that family may have. So if you are not helped through a holistic approach, something is missing, and that something may justify the victim to go back to the abusive situation, only to find out that because of the progressive nature of domestic violence, she and the children will be in a much worse situation.
And I think it's so important to focus on that fact of erosion and how it's not only gradual, but it's all encompassing, right? It's several different areas of someone's life. And when we think about ways to either stop the erosion process or to build people back up after dealing with domestic violence, what progress or changes in society give you optimism for the future of supporting children impacted by domestic violence? Are there anything...
I will go...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, you're good. I was just wondering, are there any initiatives or community efforts that are really inspiring to you?
I have to go back to what perhaps I already said it. I can't remember if I said it. But the generational impact on the children, good or bad, is what gives me the most faith and the biggest sense of hope. The resiliency of children, the opportunity that the children present us with to change things for the next generation, to do it differently, to do it better, to do it in a more involved, intentional manner. If you see something, say something kind of thing. And you mentioned it too, it necessitates a village type of approach so that everybody is involved in making sure that the children, the next generation, is a healthy one. The nurturance, I'm not referring, when I say nurturing, I'm not referring exclusively to the parents. It has to come from the entire community, because when a child is impacted and a child is not properly and timely intervened, the community will feel the impact in drug use, in aggression, in crime, in the higher number of incarcerated people, in homelessness, in the low birth in the newborns, in health issues. I mean, it intersects with everything. So helping a child, helping the community grow and nurture its children, it's a benefit to all of us.
Marta, that was so beautiful, and I could ask you so many more questions about your experience, your work, everything, but I just want to thank you sincerely for joining today and for sharing those beautiful words. I've looked at my co-host here a couple times and told her I just have goosebumps, and we're making the most heartbreaking faces to each other, but I am very glad that people like you do this incredible work. So thank you for what you do, and thank you again for joining
and I
us.
thank you because you're part of that solution too. So thank you very much for the interest in this topic. Thank you.
It takes all of us.
Absolutely.
And with that, we're going to move to a quick musical break before we speak with our Senior Director of Immigration, Linda Corchado, from Children at Risk. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. We have Linda Corchado, the one and only. Linda, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing, Breed?
I'm doing good. And we have Miss Susannah over here as well today.
Hi, Linda.
Hey, Susannah. Good to connect with you.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a fun little crew here today. So, Linda, we just had a pretty heavy conversation, and I know that in your work it can be kind of a heavy field sometimes. So I just want to open the floor first and foremost to just offer or ask you to share a little about your work and how you became focused on advocating for children of immigrant families.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents were actually field workers in California in the 1960s. So, you know, it was always important for me to keep that population in particular at the heart and center of what I do. So I went to law school in New York City. I came back to El Paso, here where I was born. And that's when I started representing asylum seekers, especially, you know, I started under the Obama administration and obviously the Trump administration. And so the work has really evolved and it continues to do so. So now that I'm at Children at Risk, I do more of the policy work. And so when you think about doing policy work in the state of Texas, for children of immigrants, it's almost laughable. But for me, I look for Trojan horses. And so that's in all of the key values here at Children at Risk, right? Like health equity, improving educational outcomes and access for all kids, et cetera, et cetera. So that has been really the way that I approach the work now.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think that it is such a delicate dance in our state when it comes to making sure that we are as impactful as possible. And so I really appreciate you taking the time and effort to look for those Trojan horses and ways that make impacts for children. And when we think about children of immigrants, especially in this ever-changing political and social environment, what are some of the unique challenges that children of immigrants face? And what do you think the public should better understand about those challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge comes from the reality that mixed status families experience. I think a lot of people, when they think about children of immigrants, they immediately think they're newcomers or refugees, right? Like they just got here. But the largest population of children of immigrants are U.S. citizens in the U.S. and in Texas. And so the realities they face are much more nuanced in the sense that they really live in a danger zone. And so, you know, the biggest obstacles they face are changing immigration laws and enforcement priorities. Under the Trump administration, they are going to face enforcement priorities that prioritize the deportation and removal of anyone who's undocumented in this country. And so that means that key caregivers could be taken away from them, that their families will, you know, even plummet, right? They may be in a middle-income household and they may plummet to poverty. These kids may only have a foster care system to turn to next, right? So these children are highly politicized. They just can't be kids in America. And you really see the cost that they pay when it comes to how our policies approach them.
I'm glad you bring up the policies as well, too, because, I mean, this new administration, we have a lot of fears going into it, specifically around the immigration space. And we've talked about that a little bit beforehand, but what have you seen in your work, and how are these developments impacting the well-being and stability of kids?
I think it's very traumatic. I just feel like a lot of people in the community, not just kids, but everyone is really trying to even get a sense of what's about to unfold. And a lot to say about many Latinos who also supported Trump. And so there's this sense amongst certain supporters that they feel that, Trump is all bark and no bite. Or, yeah, he'll deport a certain sector, but that won't really impact me. And so there's a sense of disbelief to some degree of like, well, is that going to really come to me? And then there's another sense of just widespread fear where families are considering self-deportation. They may be considering moving to another state. Social workers that I connect with always stress the importance of children, especially mixed status households, to have a plan, right, where they carry important information in their backpack. Like if mom's detained, where do I go? Where does this person live? What's their phone number? Identifying information. And those are for U.S. citizen kids, right? For kids that may still be in the process, who may have come unaccompanied minor status, for example. They also live a very uncertain future in America.
Absolutely. And I think, thinking about having to tell your child to carry important information in their backpack just in case, that's a really, really heavy reality to live with. And when we think about current organizations that are doing great work now, especially to help those mixed status families, do you notice any initiatives, any programs that really could possibly help bridge this ever-widening gap and provide some sort of meaningful support as children deal with the trauma and uncertainty of what's to come?
Well, I think, on one hand, it's the usual fighters that have been in this fight, so not just legal service providers, but social workers who are really important to families more than ever, right, because they can help them navigate the system that may be very foreign to them or that they've never even had to go through, right? Like a lot of families are independent and self-sufficient, so they wouldn't know what resources to go to. So having those trusted community organizations are more important than ever to help them navigate. But I would say there's also the interplay of the Texas legislature that comes to mind. Under Operation Lone Star, the Attorney General has brought a lot of suits against nonprofit orgs that provide support to immigrants. So at the same time, the call is clear. Everyone knows what that is, but there's also an additional fear of nonprofits that they might be the next target, not just from the Attorney General, but also from a very conservative Texas legislature who might be thinking of other ways to dismantle their support.
It breaks my heart to hear this. It really does. It's such a complex issue, but also it's just such a human issue. Like, I don't know. We just need to support our kids better and have these conversations. And it's always a nuance. But these families are really just getting it from every single side, it seems like, especially with legislature right now. I'm curious, how does the dynamic of mixed status families impact like access to services and their sense of security? And then is there anything that we can do as advocates, community members? Like, how can we support our neighbors who might be feeling this intense amount of fear and anxiety over the future?
Well, I think access to services is going to be big, right? Trump also, under his first administration, created this public charge rule that immigrant families were still terrified of even 2 years into the Biden administration. And this prevented families who are eligible to receive certain benefits, it prevented them from even coming forward to access them because under, his rules and regulations, it could negatively impact their ability to have more stable status in the United States. And I feel that is one very big concern is public charge may come to fruition in another way to try and circumvent other legislation that will come forward. But in terms of how communities get in, well, I was just going to say not just public charge, but now with the deportation threat, I feel that a lot more families are going to be fearful of stepping forward to receive services. Mm-hmm. I know the prior call was on domestic violence, for example, so that also means stuff like that, right? Like victims of crime, victims of domestic violence who need support from our law enforcement could very well be afraid to come forward now. So these kids will be stuck in violent households. What communities can do, I think it's also working. We got to start local, and so working with mayors, working with the county to see is there any way that those local communities could create firewalls to minimize the harm of widespread deportations in their communities. So if the presidency and the Congress and Texas Ledge is far from reach, what can we do locally in our communities? So that's something we're also exploring.
It's going to take a lot of creativity, a lot of determination, I think, and just standing up and standing here for kids and for families. Linda, I had so many more questions for you, but we got really far into that, and I'm out of time, unfortunately, but we'll have you back again soon to dig into the things that give you hope next time.
Thank you, Bree and Susannah. Take care.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
And we're going to go to a very quick musical break before we do our data of the day. I can't wait to find out what 16% is. All right, and we are back for our data of the day. Dr. Data, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
So good, so good. I have Susannah here with me, and we are just dying to know what is 16%.
Absolutely. Is it Halloween candy?
It's not Halloween candy, but it is related to something on the calendar that was pretty close. So that is an election statistic. It's actually the gender gap in the vote between Gen Z women and men for Trump and Harris. So Trump did 16% better amongst Gen Z men than with Gen Z women.
I would say I'm not totally surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and actually looking at some of the NBC data, it looks like Trump actually ended up edging out support for Harris among Gen Z men. It was 49% to 47%, but that being said, with the overall Gen Z population, it was still breaking 54% to Harris versus 42%.
That's fascinating. Is there anything driving that, do you think? Is it really just boys voting for boys more often, or what do you think?
So there's a couple different things that happen with this election. One is that, the Donald Trump's campaign did a lot to try to target the young male vote. Mm-hmm. For example, going on those media shows that are generally considered to be, not as traditional, considering like Joe Rogan, for example. So he did a lot to go out. Also, a lot of his messaging around the economy was really based around this idea that, men just aren't doing as well as women right now, that, the graduation rates for college are much better. in certain areas for women than it is men, that he was arguing there wasn't as much economic opportunity. And he kept hitting that hard, very much so, particularly in those late days of the campaign, and honestly was able to do something that many Republicans have not been able to do, is tapping into the young vote, at least a segment of it, per se.
Interesting. I would love to meet his political strategist, because that's a fascinating technique, and to hear that it's pretty revolutionary among the party as well.
It really is, too. And, when it comes to, Donald Trump, he does not follow traditional formulas when it comes to campaigning, but indeed it ended up working in this case. Now the only question is, of course, whether or not, he's really going to be able to follow up with making sure that there is that economic growth, right? So we just got some numbers today. Of course, this is before Donald Trump is taking, office, but inflation did edge up slightly, but it is still down a little bit from what it was in the previous years. But with all that being said, President Trump is going to have a lot of work to do in order to maintain that vote moving forward. And generally speaking, midterm elections don't turn out very good for the governing party, especially when they have a trifecta.
Absolutely. So I think that is a huge question of, do you think this will kind of set a new precedent in campaigning tactics, where there'll be more of an interest in maybe targeting podcasts and alternative forms of media?
Very much so. I definitely think that if anything to take from this campaign is that those what we consider non-traditional may very well become the traditional in the future, to be able to tap into those different segments of the population. But with that, too, there's a bit of a shift even within the coalitions between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. What we've essentially seen now is a bit of a realignment, where you're ending up with populations that very traditionally voted, of course, for the Democratic Party now shifting over more to the Republican side. For example, Latino men. We saw even just this past time around that, Republicans did much better in the Valley. They're really trying to shift themselves to be like the party of the working class, and how long that's going to last for, it's going to be really fascinating to see, and whether or not Donald Trump is going to be able to keep that coalition together, or even the GOP is able to keep that coalition together.
I know I will have my eyes peeled just watching what's happening in the next few months and years, honestly. Dr. Kulesa, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating, right, Susannah?
Oh, for sure.
Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, we'll talk to you next week. And with that, we're going to pop to a really quick musical break before we talk to our favorite regular guest, Megan Menchaca from the Houston Chronicle. All right, and we are back, and we are chatting with Megan Menchaca, an education reporter with the Houston Chronicle. She has joined us quite a few times to talk about the HISD bond, and now that we have the election results in, I am just dying to hear an update. Megan, how are you doing today?
How are you?
We're good. I have Susannah Young over here with me as well.
Hi, Megan. We're great to have you back.
Hi there. Glad to be here.
So we wanted to kind of hop right in with the issue that's on everyone's mind. So we know that there was the $4.4 billion bond proposal that HISD put forth, and that bond did not pass. So for any first-time listeners, can you just share a little bit of background on the bond and what was outlined in the proposal?
Sure. So the district, as you mentioned, had a $4.4 billion bond. About $2 million of that would have gone to renovating and refurnishing schools. They were planning to do upgrades to all the schools, but particularly a focus on 43 schools that hadn't seen renovations in a long time. About $1 billion for lead remediation, security upgrades, and HVAC improvements. So that's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning improvements at all 273 of the district schools. And then another $1 billion to expand pre-K, build 3 new career and technical education centers, and then upgrade some of the district's current technology, particularly like iPads, Chromebooks for students.
So all these things sound good in a very big way for me. And I know that there's been a lot of discourse and some conversations happening about no trust, no bond. But as someone who's been covering this pretty much since the inception, if not beforehand, I believe, what were the main concerns, and how do you think HISD will approach future funding measures to gain community support?
Yeah, so there was a very, very large opposition movement against the bond, framing it as a referendum on Superintendent Mike Miles, who was appointed to lead the district by the TEA in June 2023. And when we talked to voters, several of them said that they were not going to approve a bond with Miles at the helm of HISD. They felt like he had lost their trust after really high principal and teacher turnover compared to previous years. They had also seen him spending things. Something I heard very recently is like how he's spending things on expanding his reform system. And kind of they felt like they just didn't really have a lot of input into district decisions, unlike previous school leadership. And that caused them to not feel comfortable approving a bond, even though many of them did agree we do need more public education funding. Our schools are not necessarily in the best shape. But to them, they wanted to show that they did not support the direction the district was going in. And regarding funding, what the HISD is planning to do, they are planning to seek grants and go to the legislature to hopefully get some more funding to address particularly school security, because they need to comply with a new school security law from 2023. But $4 billion is quite a bit of money, and that's double HISD's annual budget. And that's going to be tough for them to make up from any additional funding source.
Absolutely. And HISD is currently operating at a budget deficit. Is that correct?
It has a budget gap. So it had a budget gap so before they set the budget, they were planning to spend more money than they could, than they were getting in revenue. But when they set it at the beginning of May, during the May budget season, the budget was balanced. So they were anticipating that the revenue would equal the spending. However, obviously that changes, throughout the year. So you may anticipate spending more on this than on that. And so I think we'll know officially how all the spending worked out in the new budget season. But when they had set the budget, it was a balanced budget.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like at least the budget is balanced, which is great news. But with this lack of funding, how do you think that's going to affect HISD's long-term plans? It's particularly because they had a timeline of really, with the security updates. And then also when we think about technology and digital resources, how is that going to change their goals for modernizing school facilities and also addressing the disparities between some of our older campuses and then the new builds?
Yeah, I will say I think an important addition is that the way that they got to a balanced budget was by cutting thousands of employees. They didn't just say, let's trim here. They had to make some real significant cuts to get to that point. And that, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that may be something that happens in the future if they don't see more funds. So these schools, there's not they haven't revealed a long-term plan for what they're going to do with, for example, school security. The bond also would have addressed declining enrollment by merging certain schools together. They haven't announced what the plan is. I think they're still kind of reeling from the bond results, election results. So we don't have much of a concrete vision for what is next, how they're going to address, HVAC systems. It's very likely that the current status quo will remain in place for at least a few more years. So these HVAC systems that are seeing Band-Aid fixes, that's probably going to be the case for the foreseeable future unless another bond gets passed.
Our kids just deserve better. They need classrooms that are safe and healthy to learn in, honestly. We are kind of running low on time here, so I just want to ask you one question that's a little bit off script, and I apologize. But can you talk a little bit about Mike Miles's response when the results came in? How did he approach the community, and what has he given us any indication of where he's thinking of going, or is it still pretty all up in the air as they kind of
Sure.
process that
Sure.
information?
So he talked about how he believes that the bond failed because voters put politics of adults ahead of children, and because he says there was misinformation spread both about the bond itself and how it would be used, and HISD's previous academic achievements, the district results on the STAR test, the annual reading and math exams, and the unofficial TEA ratings. The response to that was, I would say, relatively negative. I think that when HISD's previous bond failed, the superintendent said, I am to blame. I'm going to start over, try to build community trust. That is not the direction that the superintendent went with his comments. And that has, I think, kind of turned off some people. And I talked to several, I think, experts, and a lot of them talked to me about how there may be need to be a shift in communication or a shift in two-way street with voters if the district is looking to get another bond passed. So far, Miles has not indicated whether that is going to be coming up either in the May 25 elections or in the upcoming elections. He says he's going to have to speak with the board more to get a better idea of if there's an appetite for another bond in the short term.
There's a lot in the air right now, isn't there? It kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I love when leaders take accountability for whether or not it's fully their fault, but I do love when they take accountability for having impact on the outcome of a situation. And I truly hope that in the future, Miles can begin to just build that community support. Houston is a strong, resilient community, but we are a community first and foremost, and we care about that trust, it seems like.
Yeah, a lot of bond opponents are hoping that the district, or Miles in particularly, will begin to work with them more. I think they were kind of hoping that this bond vote is a show that we have a majority, we have a strong voice, and we want to be included in this conversation. That's kind of the message I've been hearing from them, is now that we've shown what we have to say, we want to be involved further in that conversation. It remains to be seen if the district is going to do that, or if they're sort of going to proceed with the direction of these new education system reforms that they have been implementing for the past year and a half.
We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Megan, thank you so much for joining us again today, and I look forward to your next update to hear how things are continuing to evolve in regards to school funding and taking care of our students.
Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. And with that, we're going to go to a quick musical break, and we'll be right back with our final guest today.
Ey, ey, y yo no quiero ver el mundo arder, pero algo tan bonito no se puede perder. El reloj no quiere morder, pero en tus brazos me voy a esconder, ey, pa' que no me encuentren. Todo el mundo siempre está pendiente, pero no saben lo que se siente. Cruza conmigo antes que se rompa el puente, y que se esto. Quien dice lo que está correcto, si el amor nunca ha sido perfecto, ojalá sea por siempre este momento, pero si no aprovechamos. Something to say. Something is
Ooh, I like that tempo from that song there. It's very soothing.
Absolutely.
And so we are back with our final and my personal favorite guest. We have Susannah guest starring today. Susannah, how are you again?
I am wonderful. I've had the best time co-hosting with you today, and I'm excited to answer a few questions and be in the guest hot seat.
Exactly. So let's start pestering you with questions here. Today, I want to talk a little bit about your expertise, and I know that you are a Texas A+ Challenge coach. You are our Associate Director of K-12 Education. You know the classroom inside and out. So what are your thoughts on teacher retention right now?
So I think right now, our country in general is at a crisis point with teacher retention. So the Charles Butt Foundation, you may know him as the man behind HEB. Mm-hmm. They actually have a nonprofit foundation, and they do a study every few years on teacher retention. And one of the things they found is that the percentage of teachers considering leaving is at the highest percentage it's been in 3 years. 77% of teachers are considering leaving the profession.
And I remember like mid-pandemic, everyone was like, we're leaving, we're done. And like that was a huge wave. But are you saying it's really just like getting worse still?
Absolutely. I think it's still continuing to get worse. So during COVID, teachers had to learn a lot of new technology skills, become a lot more flexible, and those things never really went away. The stresses and the pressures, they've only increased. As time has gone on.
So what do we do to fix this? That's a huge problem. We have so many students and so many schools that already need more teachers.
Absolutely. So I think there are quite a few ways that we can work on solving this issue. So one of the very most basic things that you can do right now, tomorrow, is tell educators how much you appreciate them. The percentage of educators that feel valued by their school is at a rock bottom. About 20% of educators say that they feel valued by the community. So you really want to make sure that the teachers in your local school, your child's teacher, your grandchild's teacher, feels like they're appreciated and that they've made a difference. The other thing that if you are a listener at home that you can do that's immediate is that you can provide school supplies to your local school. So the average teacher spends at least $500 a year of their own money on school supplies. So when your child runs out of pencils, when the glue sticks dry up, when it's cold and flu season and they use all the tissues, it is your child's classroom teacher who's going to Walmart and replacing those supplies to help students. And as budget cuts have happened in education, this problem has only gotten worse, right? So those are two things that you can do immediately. On a larger legislative level, some of the things that we can do are raise teacher pay. We can make the certification process a lot more streamlined for teachers. So one of the things that is really difficult when you are a new teacher are the certification tests and the number of certification tests, right? So there are about 3 or 4, $200 each. Give or take. Wow. It's been a minute since I've taken my certification test, but these are tests that you have to pass. Then there's this fee you have to pay to put on your certificate, and then you have to pay an additional fee to renew those every year. On
top of a profession that can already barely gets paid what a living wage would be even.
Absolutely. And then you pile that on top of a lower than average teacher salary. Many teachers are struggling just to put groceries on the table. And then to pay all these certifications, to have a year of student teaching that's unpaid, right? Already out of the gate, teachers are at a disadvantage financially. So just making sure that we support our teachers as much as possible to let them know that they are valued members of our community and really making an impact. Because I do think that has shifted a lot. And even from my own experience, from the moment that I entered in as a teacher, it felt like it was a calling, like it was something that was, I was meant to do and that I was appreciated for. And now it becomes something that you're afraid to say at a dinner party because you don't want people to know you're a teacher, right? That stigma is that heavy in the air.
That's so sad. And it's wild to me that that's happened so quickly too. Because really not even a full generation later. And you've seen a almost black and white change in this.
Absolutely. It's terrifying.
That's heartbreaking. I want to go back to just giving people a teacher's appreciation and telling them that we appreciate them on the daily. I think words of affirmation can go very much what's the word, underappreciated, but
yes.
They really mean so much. And I have a teacher friend, and she spent all of her teacher appreciation day waiting for a card, and waiting. And each class period ticked by and ticked by and ticked by. And she's like, all I want is a stupid handmade card to say thank you. And she got one at the end of the day. It's tragic.
Yes. And I definitely think appreciation plays a huge role in it. And as parents, we can appreciate teachers through words of affirmation by providing supplies, but also don't forget to volunteer with your local parent-teacher organization. Most organizations are really just happy for any amount of time you can give, but parents really are a huge part of the school, a huge lifeblood to the school. So making sure that we are active and appreciative is huge in influencing our children's education and also the education of the community at large.
Because really it's a partnership between the family and the teachers and the school to get kids to learn, to get them happy and healthy and successful. It takes a team, like we said.
It takes a village.
Always. On the topic of teacher retention, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us today? Because I know basically nothing about this topic, so you're teaching me everything right now.
So I think one thing that you want to consider is that the average teacher leaves after 3 to 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So when we think about how we want to support teachers, it's not just in the short term, but also in the long run to make sure that we have teachers that feel like teaching is a viable career and not a stepping stone to something else.
Because in my mind, it's always been a career, maybe not so much viable, but I hope that we can address that in the very near future.
Absolutely. I do too.
All right, Susannah, we've had some heavy content today. I have some of the hardest hitting questions for you in our final few minutes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so we have recently introduced our Hip Speak segment to our radio show. And we're doing a little topsy-turvy bit here where I'm going to ask you, what is the jazziest, weirdest slang word you've heard lately?
Oh, gosh. That is a really good question. I think the word that I hear the most is slay, and I'm too afraid to use it in an actual conversation because I'm afraid they're just going to cart me away for using it improperly. But that one I've heard a lot.
That one I think takes a certain level of like tone and charisma, you know? You have the Riz to pull it off.
Oh no, Riz, there's another one.
Okay, final question for you in our final minute. If you were to make a cameo in any hit TV show or movie, and it can be current or old, whatever, what would it be and who would you play?
Okay, so I've actually have a great thought about this. Since we are on the topic of education, I think that I would love to make a cameo in Abbott Elementary.
Yes!
I could be a substitute teacher that would come in and just shake things up a little bit.
Extra jazz always, right?
Always. Maybe I'll even use slay.
They would definitely cart you out then. All right, and that is our episode this week. Thank you all so much for listening to Growing Up in America with Children at Risk, and thank you, Susannah, for being an excellent co-host as always. If you enjoyed our discussion, please tune in next Wednesday from 12 to 1 p.m. And with that, for children, we'll see you next week.
For children.
With a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood sign. This is all so crazy. Everybody seems so famous. My tummy's turning and I'm feeling kinda homesick. Too much pressure and I'm nervous. That's when the taxi man turned on the radio and a Jay-Z song was on. And a Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. Nodding my head like yeah. Moving my hips like yeah. I got my hands up to play my song. You know I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Yeah. It's a party in the USA.
Hi, this is Jim Lauderdale, and you're listening to KPFT Houston, 90.1 FM and kpft.org.